Welcome to week 6. This week we are looking at chapter 6, which is research design. Basically, the purpose of this week's activities is to describe the basic principles and types of research design, describe the selection of cases and units of observation and analysis, describe the types of evidence researchers use to answer research questions, describe methods of collecting data, and describing sources of data. Um, there are a bunch of different types of research designs that you can employ. Um, the text, I think, does a fairly good job of describing experimental designs, which, again, they're hard to execute for political behavior because uh, you know, it's really nearly impossible to create the kind of controlled conditions that you need in order to have an experimental design. Um, and then, of course, you've always got the reality that people that are engaging in that kind of experimental design are aware that they're being experimented upon. Cross-sectional and longitudinal designs are very important and can produce really valuable data. The University of Michigan has a long-standing longitudinal study of American voting behavior and American political culture. Um, Very important stuff that goes on. Comparative designs and historical designs, that's sort of more in my methodological wheelhouse. Comparative designs look, for example, at a couple of different cases. Sometimes you can use a single case. I know, I like to talk with my students about, sort of if you wanted to explore Oklahoma in comparison with similar kinds of states, you would want to find some variable that is fairly common across all the 50 states and identify 3 or 4 of them. For example, in terms of population, Oklahoma is similar with Oregon, with Kentucky, and with South Carolina and Connecticut, really. Um, Now, those states, again, part of what would make that kind of study interesting is that, certainly with Connecticut and Oregon, you have vast differences in terms of per capita income and things like that, whereas Kentucky and South Carolina are similar in terms of per capita income, but again, very different kinds of environments. Historical design is designed, right, I mean, clearly what you're looking at here is why do certain kinds of events happen? What kind of historical context produces certain kinds of outcomes? For example, back in the 70s, economists were stunned by this phenomenon called stagflation. It was something that most economic models, just couldn't predict. Where an instance where you actually have inflation, but the economy is contracting. And there were a couple of factors that contributed to that. One being that Nixon had at once, taken the United States off the gold standard and basically said we're going to allow our economy, our dollar to fluctuate, and also had imposed wage and price controls. And then you had the shocks of the OPEC oil embargoes, which is basically a fundamental hit to the economy. I mean, we are a car-driven economy, and that kind of change really impacted the economy in ways that economists didn't fully understand. And so, in a lot of instances, you have to understand and develop a theory for why that confluence of events produced that particular outcome, and what you can do to try and avoid that going into the future, because the past isn't prologue, but it does kind of rhyme. It does suggest that there are things that could be happening. In terms of data gathering, obviously you can do a number of different kinds of things. You can do questionnaires and submit surveys. You can do interviews and have focus groups. Focus groups can be very revealing in terms of providing kind of a context for what people are thinking. Ethnographic research, discourse content analysis. When I was in graduate school, I did a research assistantship with a lady that was doing a content analysis on one of the major Supreme Court cases dealing with abortion in that period, looking at all the different amicus curiae briefs that came in and coding them for different words. I think that's, kind of interesting. There are a lot of ethical considerations that you have to consider when you're experimenting on people. That's something at the graduate level you may experience. Here at the undergraduate level, we don't really ask you to do any kind of the kind of manipulations that could lead to these kinds of ethical issues. But obviously, you have to have things like informed consent. You have to maintain confidentiality. Of course, with the Milgram experiments, you realize that you have to control for the possibility of causing harm to people that are participating in a political study. These are all, I think, very important issues and certainly things that we can talk about over the course of the week. If I'm not mistaken, we only have the two events. So the two, let me see real quick. Yeah, we only have the forum and the quiz due this week. So let's make sure we stay on top of things and get our work done. Let's have a great week.